The businessman of business will tell you that you should buy expensive sunglasses because they are expensive. My sunglasses double as safety glasses. Do I need a feature like that? Of course not. I avoid danger, but these are useful because when the inevitable heat death happens, I'll be able to look directly at it as the scalding shards perforate my body. But when they dig up my bones, future archaeologists will say, damn, his orbital sockets are pristine. Now, I may not be a businessman of business, but I like to think I'm pretty good at recognizing when things are not good. It's not one of the most important skills a person could possess, but it does come in quite handy as you're watching the world slowly collapse in on itself. It helps to be one of the people that's on the sidelines going, oh, that's not good. I have an unfortunate confession to make. When my parents were entering me into the character creation screen, they put a lot of points into anxiety and none into business. As such, I decided to dedicate my schooling to video game design and development. So when it comes to bad business decisions, I know how to spot them.
Sako, we were just talking about the world and how it works.
Everything in our world is run by money, but not just money, the acquisition of more money, and not just more money, the most money, and not just the most money, all of the money that could ever exist, perpetually more and more money, now and until the end of time. Money. And this applies, of course, to all sorts of industries. If there is a good to be bought or sold, odds are pretty good that there is a company who's looking to profit off of it as much as humanly possible. And inhumanly possible. And inhumanely as possible. And of course, any company that's worth its salt can't just succeed within this societal model. A product can't just be traded for currency, and the collection of that currency can't just be used to create said product and pay the people that are responsible for its manufacturer. No, because there is a suit in charge of the company that demands growth. They have to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger each quarter, or else there are unrelated suits that will be disappointed, and maybe they will withdraw the money that they offered to help the company grow. And after all, they didn't offer up that money as an act of altruism. Of course not. They expect a return on their investment. If I give $1 to Big Bill Buttfuck's Butt Plug Boutique, well then Big Bill Buttfuck better give me $2 next year, and then $3, and then $6, and then $12, and then $24. So on, until I'm able to purchase my own diamond-encrusted butt plug to be used for purely sensible purposes. I need a new gas cap. What else would I use it for? But it's becoming increasingly obvious that there are several companies of varying sizes that just can't help but fall victim to the same pitfalls that would trip up your average everyday idiot. It won't stop happening. Nothing stifles a company's growth quite like the company itself. And there are two major corporations that we're going to discuss today in the world of video games that have quite a bit of egg on their faces lately, with a run of bad decisions that range from baffling to downright cruel. And these are the companies that the money people, the smart money people who have degrees in making money, are going to tell you are the surefire bets. These are the obvious companies, the smart companies run by the smartest people, but if that's the case, well then why are they so fucking dumb?
Together, we must take back control of freedom.
One of the biggest surprise video games of 2024 has been February's Helldivers 2, a sequel to a game that I played a few rounds of about 9 years ago and thought was fine. Before the launch of Helldivers 2, I wasn't really paying it a whole lot of mind. You see, I was very busy in the month of February. I was entering another plane of consciousness entirely. Sleeping. I was sleeping. For the whole month. So I didn't really have much in terms of headspace for the machinations of Super Earth and all of the soldiers that were doing their part. But what really put the game on my radar in a major way was the incredible response to it. It sold several million copies in its first month, and not only did it have a large player base, but it had an engaged player base. There were posts on social media, clips on YouTube, streaming of the game. It's pretty much what any game developer would dream of for their game's release. So this runaway success must have made developer Arrowhead and publisher Sony very happy, right? Probably, but then Sony went and said, hey, this is pretty great. How do I fuck this? And fuck it, they did. Sony then forced Arrowhead to release a statement saying that players of Helldivers 2, even on Steam, would have to link a PlayStation Network account in order to continue playing the game that they purchased. Now, if you live in the good old US of A or even the US of K, that's probably not that big of a deal, right? You probably already have one or both of those types of accounts and would be able to link them without much issue. But in a little over 170 countries in the world, they just don't have access to PSN. But don't you worry, says some corporate Sony slug. Just create a PlayStation Network account anyway, and say that you are in a region that does support PSN. Lie to us. Whisper sweet nothings to us. An act that, of course, violates Sony's own terms of service and could result in the perpetrator getting banned. And that is when the review bombs fell upon the land, scarring Helldivers 2's Steam page in an overwhelmingly negative blitzkrieg. A major order from a community enraged. Refund that shit. It turns out, making your game unavailable to a significant chunk of the world that would have gladly paid for it and continued playing it well into the future, keeping the game relevant and alive, is actually a phenomenally bad idea. Especially if you're planning on doing something like that to the PC gaming community, a group of people that is already quite mistrustful of console manufacturers. But as has been proven true time and again, nothing scares those greedbag corpo fucks quite like seeing all of the money leave in droves. So of course the decision was walked back after public outcry and a lot of refunds. Sony then released a pitiful statement saying, "We've heard your feedback and we're still learning what's best for PC players." I don't know what that voice was. I'm turning into Stephanie Sterling, Jesus. Still learning, huh? You're still learning? That had to be learned? You needed to learn that making your game inaccessible is something that you shouldn't do? I mean, if you needed to learn that, then who is responsible for putting you in charge? Oh, we've heard your feedback. Oh, please. As if this isn't going to stop them from trying a similar ploy later on down the line. Fucking hell. But if there is any silver lining to this sad tale, it is the overwhelming response of the community. When they come together in common cause, they are truly unstoppable. Just like the players who are rapidly completing major orders in Helldivers 2, they are just as capable of bullying a corporation into submission when they do dumb shit, which is naturally always the correct course of action. It is always a moral obligation to bully a corporation because a corporation has no feelings, and neither do the executives who run it. Be mean. For democracy. Now, ultimately, it remains to be seen how this black eye is going to affect the game going forward. The game was review bombed into oblivion, and there are going to be some folks that will blame Arrowhead for this, even if that is unfair. Rightful blame, in my opinion, belongs solely at the feet of Sony, and whatever goodwill they had has now been tarnished because of this, and a level of consumer trust has been lost. All in the name of dumb corporate greed. But at least this story had a modicum of positivity to it. The same cannot be said for our other example today.
You ever wonder why we're here? It's one of life's great mysteries, isn't it?
Now, in order to understand the Microsoft story, we need a little bit of a preamble. I'll try not to make it too long because I don't want to be here all day. I've got other things to go get mad about. And other things to not get mad about. It's good to be happy about things whenever you can find them, because we need that. Times being what they are. Anyhoozle, back in the late aughts and the early 2010s, Microsoft was doing pretty well for itself. The Xbox 360 was selling quite well. Not as well as the Wii, of course, but Microsoft gracefully took the L in that department by claiming that they weren't even in competition with the Wii. The Wii was just a nursing home bowling simulator. No, Microsoft's main competition was Sony and the PlayStation 3. Luckily for them, Sony was in the middle of making their own gaffes.
$599 US.
Some things never change, do they? But as we reached the middle of the decade, both Sony and Microsoft started preparing their next generation of consoles. The follow-up to the Wii had been a sad, wet fart, and this allowed its competitors to strike. So how did Microsoft handle that opportunity?
TV, MTV, TV. Xbox, go home.
Uh-oh. And then there's that little number about the Xbox One initially requiring a constant internet connection to even be functional. An interesting decision considering America's infrastructure for internet connectivity is pure dogshit today, let alone a decade ago. A lot of people got pretty upset. So it was time for Xbox bigwig Don Mattrick to do a little bit of damage control. And I'm not going to get into the full story of the Don, but suffice it to say, in my opinion, he's a useless douche. And that's all you really need to understand for the purposes of our story today, which I promise we are getting to. In a now infamous interview with Jeff Keighley, who's also a bit of a useless douche, Don Mattrick was asked what he had to say to the gamers that would not be able to connect to the internet and therefore not be able to use Microsoft's new console.
Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right.
You can see in this moment that Jeff is as stunned as his robot face will allow him to show. He then sets Don up with the easiest of layups. He grabbed the rebound and tossed it to Don for the easy putback.
So stick with 360. That's your message if you don't,
Well,
if you don't like it?
Like, did you really mean to say that? Like, is that really your message? Just stick with the old console? Stop being poor? Move to a better area for internet?
If you have zero access,
It became abundantly clear at this point that Don had to go. Sure, he was just marching to company orders, but he had failed to set people's minds at ease over this idiotic decision that Microsoft had to walk back due to public outcry. Which introduces us, finally, to the man of the hour, Phil Spencer, the new face of the Xbox brand and the man in charge, a man that appears to be the polar opposite of Don Mattrick. Phil looks and sounds like someone who actually plays video games and enjoys them, whereas Don looked like somebody who didn't even understand how the controller worked. Phil wears t-shirts that have video game logos on them. OMG, he just like me for real, for real. At least until now. I think a lot of people already know this, but it needs to be said. Microsoft has been trying to bully its way to the top of the video game ladder for a long time now. They're a typical behemoth American company that thinks the only way to succeed is to buy up all of your competition so that all of their goodwill and product revenue will then go to them. You don't have to compete if you're the only player on the field, and anti-monopoly laws can always be lobbied against to circumvent. My guess is that they saw Skyrim getting ported to every console ever made, complete with an active and engaged community, and said, I want that. That Todd guy is a genius, and his games make a lot of money.
I'm not kidding.
And that Starfield seems pretty ambitious. I want all of that. I want it for myself. Sony can't have it. It's mine. But buying Bethesda Game Studios means buying Bethesda. And buying Bethesda means getting all of Bethesda. And getting all of Bethesda means getting their ancillary studios as well. And to Microsoft at the time, they probably thought, oh, cool, free shit. But if you've ever gone to a restaurant that offers up free bread before your meal, sometimes you load up on the bread before the meal has even reached the table. And in this instance, Bethesda is an entire meal. Starfield is the bread. And that's my review of that game. 6 out of 10, it's bread.
Bread!
So now we find ourselves in a position where Microsoft is realizing just how expensive it is to be a publisher for all of these studios. These games all cost money, ballooning costs that they and their contemporaries are undeniably to blame for. So now they find themselves in a bit of a pickle. In their line of thinking, Bethesda Game Studios is going to release Elder Scrolls 6 sometime within the next decade, and Microsoft is hoping that it is essentially Skyrim 2. And they bet this entire venture on them, so they've got to throw all their resources at it as possible. It's a sunk cost fallacy. They have to put everything behind Skyrim 2, so BGS is safe from the corporate guillotine. So if they want to save money, Microsoft has to look elsewhere. Which brings us to Arcane Austin. Now, Arcane has pedigree thanks to games like Prey and Dishonored, but Microsoft doesn't know what a Dishonored is, and immersive sims take a long time to make. They're niche games for nerds, and these fucking failures also made Redfall, a game that Microsoft itself ordered because multiplayer live service looter shooter are words that someone told them equaled money. Now, of course, Arcane had never made a game like that before, and probably never wants to ever again. They want to make another immersive sim, but instead Microsoft told their employees to immerse themselves in the unemployment line, all in the name of saving a little bit of coin. But of course, that wasn't enough, so then they looked at Tango Gameworks, who had just come off of a very successful run with Hi-Fi Rush, a well-selling, award-winning Game of the Year candidate. It won the Game Award. But it's a bright and colorful, budget-looking title. If only Tango Gameworks had sold it for $70 instead of it being put on Game Pass for free. Then Microsoft could have made an assload of money off of it. They, of course, do realize that they need more games like Hi-Fi Rush on their platform, though, so naturally they shutter Tango Gameworks entirely.
Sacre bleu!
But of course, you can't take too many shots at poor innocent Phil or Microsoft. He feels really bad about all this. He's bummed out about taking away people's livelihoods. These were hard decisions for him. I say this with all due respect. I don't care. Phil should feel bad, because this entire thing is his fucking fault. The shuttering of game studios is the result of his poor leadership and the short-sighted acquisitions made by Microsoft. If he is the one who has led them to this seeming financial ruin to where the only decision that quote-unquote had to be made is laying off a bunch of workers, then he should be the one to answer for that. And of course, that's never going to happen. Even if Microsoft did solely blame Phil Spencer, Matt Booty, and the other executives at Xbox, they would all have golden parachutes set up for them, and some other dough-faced, useless dipshit cut from the same cloth of clueless zombies would take on the role, and he might not even wear t-shirts that have game logos on them. I did my best, unsuccessfully, I fear, to make this as lighthearted as I could, but in truth, I find this whole thing to be repugnant. Like, I'm legitimately infuriated by all of this. Like I said in the beginning, my degree is in game design, and with every passing year, I find myself less and less willing to be involved in the game industry as a dev at a company, because it's just so volatile. Like, you could make a well-selling, award-winning Game of the Year candidate, and the monolithic corporation parent company can still close your studio down because there's a bunch of suits that look at numbers all day but don't understand them. They can just arbitrarily decide that the line going up is more important than the human beings that work for them. Sure, the Sony story from earlier, that's aggravating and bad and irritating, and ultimately, Sony does lose consumer trust, but theoretically they can gain that back. They have made plenty of gaffes in the past that they've managed to get around, and they've done that because they have a plethora of video games that people love that they publish. Releasing a really good game will heal a lot of wounds in the eyes of consumers, whether that's fair or reasonable or not. Developers are probably going to give them a side eye and likely be more vigilant when working out contracts with them in the future, but ultimately Sony is going to recover probably pretty well from all of this. Microsoft is a little harder to gauge. I mean, they're not the only publisher to ever shutter a studio. Plenty of other large corporations have done it and have been doing it for a long time, but usually the reasoning for doing so is, I don't want to say better because it's never good and it's always a failure of leadership, but it's certainly easier for them to argue if they ever speak on it at all. The game didn't sell. There were too many behind-the-scenes problems. The game wasn't good. Deadlines missed. Some sort of nonsense. But now, after all this, not only was the timing bad, not only did the studios have pedigree, but the executives look like clueless, heartless monsters more than they already did. And on top of that, Microsoft doesn't have the first-party exclusives that other companies have that they can use as leverage. Like, take Nintendo, for example. They are draconian with their IPs, and they do unusually evil shit all the time. But a new Legend of Zelda will clear things up real fucking fast for them. Like, I honestly think that Nintendo's holding on to Metroid Prime 4 solely to make up for some dark shit that they have planned later. Be on the lookout. Microsoft really only has Halo, and they don't even really have Halo anymore because Infinite was much maligned. Would a new Gears of War game solve all of this? I don't think so. So what property do they own that they could use to garner back some goodwill? Blinks? A sequel to Blinks? Well, they're gonna need Blinks to sweep time for them, only in this instance, Microsoft themselves are the Tom Gang.
This is the way the world ends.
I didn't know how I wanted to end this. I just knew that the whole situation made me mad, and I wanted to write it all down and get it all off my chest. Like I said, this situation, while specific to the video game industry, is certainly not unique to it, and it's not unique to big corporations like Microsoft and Sony either, and it's not hard to decipher what the problem is. Greed. That's all it is. It's greed. There's a greedy guy up at the top who has more money than most of us will ever dream of. A guy that is set for life several times over decides he needs even more, but also that his speculative gambler friends also need more, and that it's okay that if the accumulation of their wealth comes at the expense of product quality, the people who make said product, and the people who consume said product. As I see it, this situation isn't tenable. It won't last forever. People are slowly, very slowly, but slowly starting to realize the power that they wield over the speculators and the ultra-wealthy. But at the rate things are going, these companies may eat themselves before we ever have an opportunity to wield that power. But until that time, for all those corpos out there, I hate you, you suck. And I think that ought to do it.
It
Just works.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, please fulfill the whims of the algorithm with likes, comments, and a subscription to the channel. If you want, you can support my struggle over on Patreon. There are perks over there for those who join, like being able to watch the fever dreams like this one 24 hours before everyone else. Support me if you can. Love me if you must. Chin up, and have a great rest of your day.